So, Braylon, here we go. First interview on the Field Notes podcast, and it's a big one. This is an expert. This is a guy everybody needs to hear from. He's the supervisor of Georgia's deer program. He's a state deer biologist. He's Charlie Killmaster from the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. And Charlie, man, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on the Field Notes podcast.
No, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So I want to start here because I just don't think that anybody could read and see your name and want to start anywhere else. What was it like growing up with an insanely cool name like Charlie Killmaster?
Well, I never got a lot of the cool nicknames associated with it. Like my dad, his nickname was Killer, and I didn't get anything cool like that. I got Little Killer from his friends when I was a kid, but none of my childhood nicknames were associated with my last name, believe it or not. So it was more of a big deal once I got into the field. So
yeah, how often do you hear from people, whether it's other game wardens or people, hunters, that are just like, oh my God, what a name? All
the time. Anytime I'm carded for anything, the irony of any sort of interview or anything like that, the irony of being the deer biologist and having a last name like Killmaster never ends.
That's awesome. Do you have a nickname now?
Not really, just Dad.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Sorry, Braylon. Tell us just a little bit about your background real quick. Rather than, kind of us try and read it off and sound robotic. What brought you to where you're at now?
Yeah. So, I spent my life, outdoors as a kid, loved spending that time outside. I was in Boy Scouts, made it all the way through Eagle Scout. So that was one of the biggest, influences, lots of, all sorts of outdoor activities. I had a great uncle, my grandmother's older brother, that was a wildlife refuge manager for 50 years for Fish and Wildlife Service. So growing up listening to his stories really inspired me towards this direction. And his son, my cousin, also ended up he was a wildlife biologist as well, studied deer for his PhD at University of Georgia, and ended up I was in school with a lot of my professors when I came along. So those were some of my bigger inspirations that led me down this path. I actually started in the forestry realm, but then quickly moved over to wildlife from there.
Cool. That's awesome. That's a great that's a kind of a great, recap of kind of how you got here. And then obviously the big thing we want to talk about today is CWD. And Braylon, I'm much more of a fisherman than I am a hunter. Braylon is bow hunter deluxe. Like, she loves it. She eats, sleeps, and breathes it. And overall, just kind of tell us what CWD is. I think that's where we need to start, because the goal of having you on was just to kind of go nuts and bolts. What do people need to know? What does the DNR know?
Yeah, so chronic wasting disease is a very complicated disease. Unfortunately, there are very few diseases like this in the animal kingdom on the planet. So already it's very different from other things. It's caused by an infectious protein, so it's not a virus or a bacteria or a parasite. The other kind of living forms of diseases are things that cause disease to replicate themselves. Prions are just kind of a error in the code of nature. Essentially, these misfolded proteins can spread from deer to deer, and the body doesn't recognize them, so there's no real immune response to them, and it's very slow. Unlike other diseases, it doesn't move within the animal very fast. It doesn't spread very fast across the landscape, but it does its majority of its damage through just persistence. Like once it's established in an area, it's just there. It doesn't go anywhere, and it steadily grows in prevalence, or the proportion of the population that has it if it's left unmanaged, and it kind of grows like a cancer on the landscape. So it's a difficult thing to deal with, unlike every other disease that has an immune response, and animals adapt to it.
So, Charlie, there was a new confirmed case recently at the end of last month. And what was your reaction to that? Was that expected, or did y'all kind of see that coming, or what did you think?
Well, we certainly expect to find new cases. The way we do our surveillance, we're looking for a needle in a haystack. This is very difficult to find, especially at low prevalence. You're looking in a big state with an average annual deer harvest of 280,000 deer, and trying to strategically collect samples all over the state, and look for something that may only be occurring in an area, and at low prevalence would be maybe 1 or 2 deer out of 100. So you can imagine how difficult it is to find without testing hundreds of thousands of deer on an annual basis, which is insanely cost prohibitive, and not to mention the staff time that it would take. We're just not equipped to deal with it at that level. So when we find a case, and looking for that needle in a haystack, we then converge on that area to collect a whole bunch more samples in that small locality. So we certainly expect to find more cases as that sample intensity increases dramatically. This 3-county area may have had several, few dozen samples a year across the 3 counties. And now we're going to see hundreds, potentially thousands of samples in this 3-county area. And so we certainly expect to see the number of positives increase. I was a little disheartened by the distance between the most recent detection and the initial detections. But aside from that, we certainly expect to find more. And really, a lot of our sampling right now is trying to paint a footprint. What are we dealing with? How far has it spread? What counties do we need to include in these testing recommendations? And continue with our management, along with like what percentage of the population or the prevalence is infected with chronic wasting disease, which has the bigger implications for managing it, because our primary management tool for chronic wasting disease is designed to keep the prevalence low.
So we're sitting here looking at these counties, and it's Lowndes, it's Lanier, it's Berrien County, kind of my neck of the woods. I grew up down there. Do you, maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't, and tell me it's none of our business, or that you just don't, you don't want to answer it. But do you suspect it's wider spread than that? Do you guys suspect that there's, maybe more cases, probably more cases? How would you state that?
Well, number one, I work for the government, and we are transparent. So there is nothing that's none of your business. It's all of your business. Absolutely. You can ask me any of those questions. I will say that, as far as I know, as widespread as it is right now, there's about 5.5 miles difference between the first positive and the most recent positives. I can't really even make a guess as to beyond that. I can tell you that our tipping point to include a county in those testing recommendations or the CWD management area is any county that touches a 5-mile radius around a known positive. And what that does, that dramatically increases our sampling intensity in a county in terms of what our staff are trying to collect. So one of those CMA counties, we might be looking for, anywhere from 3 I don't. It depends on the type of deer that we're sampling because they have different sampling values, but it could be anywhere from 200 to 400 samples versus maybe 100 to 150 for one of the surrounding counties. So the sampling intensity goes way up once a county is within that 5-mile radius.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And then obviously when you start talking about, the where it is now, and what are you guys like encouraging people to do in that area? What's the messaging for the folks that are in that specific 3-county area right now?
So our recommendation is for all hunters in those 3 counties, Lanier, Lowndes, and Berrien, to test deer. That really helps drive our management tool. It's called cluster sampling, where we collect additional samples around a known positive, and that has been shown in a number of other situations in other states. Keep that prevalence low if you catch it early. So that's the real driver, is that widespread participation in sampling in those counties. So I highly encourage everybody to take advantage of the testing opportunities. Testing is free. We have a number, I don't even know, well over a dozen, maybe close to 15 or more sampling locations in and around those counties. There's our CWD website, georgiawildlife.com/CWD, I think. I can double check that web address. Sorry, I don't have it right in front of me like I should. But you can go on to our CWD website through georgiawildlife.com and find any of those testing locations. There are taxidermist processors that are participating. You don't even have to have your deer processed or utilize their services. They'll accept it. We contract with them to collect their samples regardless. And then we also have these freezers set up that are kind of self-serve, where you can drop off the tissue samples we need are actually in the lymph nodes inside the neck. So we need the deer head. And you can drop off your deer head, when you're done processing, if you self-process in one of those areas, and we'll test it. But yeah, that's the main thing, is really encouraging participation in that testing, because that drives our whole both monitoring and management of chronic wasting disease. So
Charlie, what are the known transmission details? Like, is there a concern for human consumption? I've seen some people concerned for their dogs, like if they're tracking with dogs and dogs like to, lick the blood, whatever. So what can you tell us about that?
So CWD has not been shown to infect humans. They study it and continue to study it intensely to make sure, because of similarity to other prion diseases, that infectious protein type disease. So there's a lot of research going on, and to date, they've known about this disease since the 1960s. Tremendous amounts of research on human animal models, like transgenic mice that are called, so quote unquote, humanized mice. They're doing brain organoids, like where they basically create a quasi-functional, brain in a petri dish type of deal, and all of those things have indicated a real strong species barrier to human transmission, along with some studies with other primates. So there doesn't really, certainly there's been no single human case. There's been people that have been groups of people that have consumed CWD positive venison decades ago that continue to follow those people through time to monitor their incidence of any other diseases. So there's a lot of things that really indicate that it's not a big concern for human safety. So again, it hasn't been shown to infect humans. Pets and livestock, by the same token, the only livestock that they have that show a little bit of susceptibility through any like normal disease transmission pathway would be sheep. There's been some recent studies that under experimental conditions, at least, they can infect sheep with this, which, one of the leading theories on where chronic wasting disease came from was actually a similar disease in sheep that they theorized may have jumped into mule deer in the Rockies. So, so that's not really unheard of that it might jump that way. But in terms of domestic dogs, that kind of thing, there's no indication that it might infect them or cattle or anything else for that matter.
Just kind of reading into how the human brain works, most folks are going to want to make a comparison, right? Like most folks are going to want to say, they're going to want to know, where does this rank? Where does this compare in terms of the overall concern for the Georgia deer population? How do you view that? Like, is this the biggest issue facing us right now, or is, as it sits, are there other things that are kind of more important?
Well, I would certainly say it's the biggest disease issue that we face, that we have here right now. There are always other potential disease concerns that we don't have in the U.S. that we are concerned about that could have disease implications. New World screwworm fly that's starting to blow up in Mexico and approaching the U.S. border. That's a big concern and doesn't have implications for wild animals, wildlife, as well as livestock. So there's a lot of potential concerns there. So I don't want to say it's the biggest issue, but it's the biggest one that we face right now, and it's the newest one. And the fact that it's kind of there. Once you get it, it doesn't go away. So and our options to deal with it are limited in the sense that we can't eradicate it in most cases. So it's certainly a big concern, but there's a lot of other concerns with exclusion of hunting through suburban development and all of these things that create other problems for deer management that are unrelated to disease. So from a disease standpoint, it's absolutely one of the biggest, most important disease issues we face.
How does this kind of compare to EHD? I know some people have been talking about that, and that kind of CWD being prioritized over the concern for EHD. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so let me start with EHD, or epizootic hemorrhagic disease. It is the devil we know.
I'm glad you got to say that, by the way.
Yes, it is EHD or HD or blue tongue, all the same thing. There's different viruses that cause hemorrhagic disease: blue tongue virus and EHD virus. The pathogenesis of the disease, like the damage that it causes in the body, is the same. So we've had those viruses in our deer population for probably at least hundreds of years, since long before we ever knew what they were. So they're very endemic to the deer population. They absolutely do cause significant population impacts in some areas of the country. Thankfully, in Georgia, we have hemorrhagic disease so frequently down here because of the biting midge, or the no-see-ums that transmit it, that our herd immunity is very high to it, and we don't see population level impacts of the disease. Now, we'll certainly see individual properties where they'll lose a number of deer, find a lot of deer dead from hemorrhagic disease in some years. This year being one of our, certainly one of the worst years in my career. But the good thing about hemorrhagic disease is that the deer that survive it develop immunity, and it gives them some protection, and their offspring some protection for several years, 3 to 5 years, maybe following that, depending on the serotype of the virus. So the issue with chronic wasting disease, it is in addition, it's EHD and CWD. They're not mutually exclusive. So it's a new form of mortality that can be just as significant, if not more significant. And unlike hemorrhagic disease that is seasonal, like when we get a good hard frost, those midge populations go down and it stops, and then that immune response kicks in the herd, and they're good to go for a number of years, and chronic wasting disease continues on. We liken it to, chronic wasting disease is more like an escalator in terms of the percent of the population infected, and then hemorrhagic disease is more like a roller coaster with ups and downs. But by and large, with chronic wasting disease, if left unmanaged, those impacts are consistent on that for the property owners that have it. Every year, it's mortality every single year that's on top of everything else that kills deer. So that's the problem with it. And it's pretty dismissive to say, well, we shouldn't worry about chronic wasting disease because hemorrhagic disease kills more deer. And that's like saying, well, we shouldn't worry about cancer because of, heart disease kills more people or something like that. They're both problematic.
Yeah.
Very much so.
I gotcha. Okay. And are there any incentives or mandates that'll be given to those depredation permit holders to get their deer tested? Because I know that we'll get the deer tested from this season, and then we'll have to wait until next season to get the majority of them. But I guess to continue that testing throughout the summer months.
Well, no mandates, but we certainly encourage everyone to get deer tested. In addition, especially no matter the cause. In fact, we've been collecting deer from deer control permits since during the off season. After we found the first positives, we collect samples from roadkill, sick deer reports that get reported to us. So any number of ways that we can get our hands on deer, we're going to take advantage of them in those areas. So we would, certainly encourage anybody that's got a crop damage permit. We encourage you to get those deer tested as well, but we are not mandating any testing.
Last thing, Charlie, and this may have zero impact on CWD or zero relation, I should say, to CWD. But I did want to ask you kind of about your role and the DNR's kind of thoughts on something new this season. It was that 2-day early firearm season for antlerless deer. What are your thoughts on that just in general? And did CWD kind of play any sort of factor in the decision to do that?
No, see, that was unrelated to CWD. In fact, that was something we had been mulling around before the discovery of chronic wasting disease. No, we've got a lot of crop damage issues across the state, particularly in South Georgia. So we've been trying to increase. We've got tremendous opportunity for hunters. We've got a very long season, liberal bag limits, lots of either sex days, but we still needed to increase deer harvest in particularly agricultural areas. So one of the ways we're doing that, the General Assembly allocated some substantially increased funding for Hunters for the Hungry, and we really feel like that hunters will be a lot more willing to take additional deer in those agricultural areas if they have a place to donate them. It's a great win-win. It helps solve a population issue and feed less fortunate people at the same token. So increasing that opportunity to donate. Now, in order to highlight that opportunity and especially prioritize antlerless deer, we created that early weekend that's antlerless only before the season comes in to hopefully prioritize that funding for antlerless deer and provide that early opportunity before the rut, before people get real caught up in hunting bucks and all of that. You can procrastinate, and when you get to the end of the season, it can be harder and harder to find the time to make it out into the woods. So it was really an early opportunity to increase awareness and drive some antlerless deer towards that Hunters for the Hungry. So let's see. I think the minimum the reported harvest was about 5,000 does or so.
Yeah.
That weekend, which is on par with some of our busiest weekends in the rifle season. But we're going to need to see when we get to the end of the deer season to see if that was additive on top of the normal harvest, or if it just changed the timing on when people take those does. So it shows promise, but we don't know the actual effects until we get to the end of the season and see if it was additional deer instead of just shifting harvest earlier.
Charlie, man, we appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for taking just some of your time and informing us. I learned a lot. I don't know if Braylon learned a lot or not. She knows a lot of stuff already, so she probably had it nailed down already. But man, we appreciate you.
Yeah, thank y'all so much for having me. Anytime.
Got it, man.